In this video, we'll be discussing how to make homemade, beginner-style music videos. The first step is to choose the song and to practice it. Something you want to keep in mind when you start practicing is that you might need to memorize the music. This is especially so if you're outside and you can't take a stand in music and have it right here. For example, if you want long shots and things like that. So in that case, it's very important that you memorize the music. If you're in YouTube and you want some specific SEO tips, then wait until the end, please, because there I'll be discussing some of our top tips for that kind of thing. The next step is to plan a storyline and to write a shot list. Okay, so a storyline might be something very simple. Anything that gives a little bit of direction or aim to your music video. This could be very overt or very obvious. For example, if you're doing the last rose of summer, you might be filming footage of summer roses and the transition into fall or autumn. Or it could be something much more subtle. For example, we did Be Thou My Vision, and for that my storyline was simply the increase of light. So we started pre-dawn, I think it was 6 a.m. And then the first verse was shot for the first 15 minutes. And then the second verse as the light increased, third verse, fourth verse. So you could use something abstract like the increase of light or rain or something like that, just to shape your story a little bit. A couple of tips I have here is that if you are shooting outside, you might need to take time into consideration. So in the early morning or in the late afternoon, you get magic hour and golden hour where the light is very beautiful. You might want to consider shooting in that time. And then you have to plan very carefully because the sun rises or sets really quickly. If you're shooting inside, you have to make sure that you have enough lighting, adequate lighting, so that it won't be dark, which can be very depressing unless you're going for a more cinematic look. So where you have isolated lights on the face or something like that. Something else you might consider while you're writing the shot list is whether you want to go to a new location for each segment. So a segment could be like a verse in the song. If you have a song with 4 verses, you might consider having 4 little different locations for those 4. It does not have to be far away locations. It can just be your backyard, but just a little bit of a different angle makes it more interesting, makes it more watchable. It'll increase your watch time if you're into YouTube. And then what you want to do next is to do the audio and backing track before even starting with the visuals. So if you have a sound booth or something like we have here, that's a bonus. If you do not, then simply use mattresses and blankets and things to damp the sound. Record your song together with your band and then do some basic mixing on that song. So I would suggest that you export with loud audio levels, because if you're playing outside and the audio was exported too softly, then you're going to have a hard time listening to your backing track. So rather make it nice and loud, even if it's a soft introduction or something like that, boost it quite a bit so that you can hear the rhythm and the things like that. So later you'll be creating video. You'll be shooting the video over this backtrack. So it's important that the audio comes first. We've tried it the other way around. It does not work. So start with the audio and then you play over that, mime over that later in the actual shooting of the footage. And then something else which is quite important is that to save time on the actual day of shooting, you want to export little segments. So don't export the entire song, because then the person who has the cell phone or the device is going to have to search for that particular segment which you want to take a few takes of. So rather export in segments. If you have 4 verses, export each of them separately. And then you can put it on repeat on your cell phone or smartphone, and that saves a lot of time. Also very important to remember is for each of these little segments, you want a little bit of an introduction. So, for example, if you're busy with the third little segment, cut a little bit earlier. Give a little bit of leeway, a little bit of room before the actual segment starts, so that you can pick it up when you're playing over that by ear. Of course, you won't be able to do that with the very first segment, because that's the start of the song. So you have a few things you can do to bring yourself in. You can add a click track, like 1, and then you start. Or you can actually physically count out loud when you're busy recording that song, which is a bit difficult to orchestrate. Or if you forgot to do the counting in the recording, you can actually just duplicate the very first bar. Then you have the rhythm. It's bringing you in. So that's something you can do, and then you can just cut off that little introduction bar later on. So when your audio track is ready, then you can prepare for the shoot. There are a few things you should not forget. For example, charging your Bluetooth speaker, because that's probably what you'll be using to play according to. To charge your camera. 2 cameras is great. If you have 2 cameras, you can have 2 angles at once. It saves a lot of time. You want to charge your phone because you have the backing track on there and the shot list. You don't want that to die on you. You might be able to recruit some people to help you to shoot, maybe just friends or family or neighbors. Just a person on each camera can really help to speed up the process. If they're creative or even skilled, it's a bonus. And another thing you might want to think of is where you'll be shooting. If you're shooting in town and you decided, okay, we like the sound of the golden hour, I want to go at 5 a.m. to this nice street which is tree-lined, then that's great. But just think of the people and the who might be upset by the noise. So another option you could consider is to use an app called AmpMe, which basically has the capacity to synchronize a few devices. So if you have 3 smartphones and 3 sets of earbuds or something, then each person can use his own device and his own earbuds and be connected to the others. That's just a thought. So once all the planning is done, then you'll want to shoot. So go according to your planning. You've done all the planning. You've figured it out ahead of time. You've even decided on the amount of minutes you have if the sun is rising or setting. So use your planning. Don't forget it. And then you could take 2 or 3 or 4 takes of each segment. So depending on the amount of time you have, you repeat that segment a few times, check the footage. Later on, you'll be choosing the best segment. 2 more things to remember here is that you need to take a YouTube thumbnail if you're into YouTube, because screenshotting something from the actual footage is not very good quality. So just take a nice high quality picture, which is going to be a nice clickable thumbnail on YouTube. Second thing you want to remember is to actually shoot your B-roll. It might not be the same day. You also have to plan this ahead. And it could be extensive amounts of B-roll. For example, we did Hide and Serenade. We had a nice rainy day pancake music video. And for that, I had to shoot quite a lot of B-roll. And then you have something like All Heaven Declares, where we only had a few nature scenes as B-roll. So it depends on your planning, depends on your vision for the storyline. Okay, and once all your footage is shot and your MP3 is ready, then you can combine the 2. So you go into editing software. For example, DaVinci Resolve is completely free, and iMovie is also free for Apple products. You also get paid software like Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro. But with all editing software, the idea is basically to take this series of shots and to edit them together into a cohesive whole. So what I usually do first is I take the MP3, which I've already mixed, sort of, and then I paste it at the bottom on the timeline. I make sure that all the soft parts which I boosted in order to be able to hear is returned to the normal dynamic. And then on top of that, I stack the takes. So if verse 1 had 4 takes, I stack the 4 takes, and then I just make them visible one by one and decide which take is the best, which one is going to make it into the final video. If there are some parts where there is absolutely no good take, then you can just insert some B-roll over that. It's a nice cheat. Yes, and then you just have a nice fade in, fade out. Insert your logo somewhere. And then if you export, it will be basically ready for YouTube or whichever other distribution you had in mind. Okay, now we get to the part which I mentioned in the beginning. And that is there are a few more things you need to consider if you want to make a success on YouTube. So the first is that music very easily gets a copyright claim or a copyright strike. Copyright strike is very serious. You might even have your channel deleted because of that. But copyright claim is not as serious. That just means that somebody else possesses the copyright to that song and that they are going to get all the ad revenue which you make on that video. So if you have 20,000 views at the end, then that person who possesses the copyright is going to get all of that ad revenue money. You won't be seeing any of it. This whole system is a bit broken because, for example, our very first music video was O Mio Babino Caro, and that is a classical piece from the classical repertoire, and it's public domain, supposed to be. But now we have a copyright claim from some or other opera company in Europe. So they're saying, no, this melody belongs to them and we're going to take all your ad revenue. Now, there are some ways to avoid this. While you're still in the practicing stage, you can just record a simple practice version of the song on your smartphone and upload it to YouTube as an unlisted or private video. The copyright test does run. So then if there is a copyright claim, then you'll be able to see and to make decisions from there. You could decide just to continue. It's not the end of the world. Somebody else is just going to get all your AdSense money. Or you can decide to transpose the song. For example, we are busy with El Condor Pasa in our trio. So it's a very, very popular song. There are millions of versions of that on the internet. And so we recorded it and uploaded it in F-sharp minor, which is a different key from the one most people use. I think most people use E minor. So that could be an answer. If you're getting a copyright claim and you really want this song to bring some ad revenue in the end, avoid that by transposing if you can. Especially if we know the song is not copyrighted. For example, O Mi Bambino Caro or El Condor Pasa, which is a Peruvian traditional song. So there is no reason to feel guilty about getting a copyright claim from somebody on the internet who does not have the right to that copyright anyway. Something else you want to do if you'd like to make a success on YouTube is to do keyword research. So you get vidIQ and TubeBuddy, both of which can give you a ranking for a certain keyword. So I was doing some research now for El Condor Pasa. If you put it in the English spelling, you're not going to get a very good ranking. That means your video is going to be very low down on the list because there are so many well-performing videos above it. But what I actually found out is that if I replace the O in El Condor with a Portuguese O with a little stripe on it, then I get a much better keyword ranking. That's because many Portuguese or Spanish people are searching it with that little cap, but there aren't so many videos to supply that demand with that spelling. So that's just a tiny little hack. But just like that, you can try different combinations of keywords, which is going to make your video more discoverable, which is going to make it rank higher in YouTube. So just a disclaimer here at the very end, we're not professional movie makers, but I'd like to share what works for us so that if you're just starting out and you're wondering how to make this thing work, then this is a method which actually does work without too much drama or too much money spent. So thank you so much for watching. Give it a like and we'll see you in the next video.